Hello, and welcome to Thought of You. I'm your co host, Amelia Ruby, and this is my co host.
Taylor Elise Morrison.
And on this show, we open up our group chat to talk to all of you lovely listeners about it. We post episodes once a month ish, getting into the things that we have been giving our attention for the past few weeks and the things that have been grabbing our attention during that time. In today's episode, we're going to start with a little bit of a catch up because at the end of last month's episode, we told you we were going to hang out in person that weekend, and we did. We're going to catch you up on what happened with that. I'm going to tell you a little bit about a very cool book reading that I did over the weekend. And then we are going to talk all about the Oscars, which were last night as we're recording this, and some television that we've been watching and enjoying for spring. So, Taylor, how are you today? And do you want to tell the people what we did when we hung out in February?
I am doing lovely on this Monday morning, even though I woke up and there was snow on the ground. Did not expect that. The weather has been wild. And yeah, my nose and my allergies are surprisingly doing okay, but the rest of the week, we'll see how those things go. In terms of what we got to do, you came to Chicago and I got to take you on one of my emergent favorite friend dates. For a long time, I loved, and we've actually done a version of this as well. I loved going to the Art Institute because I'm a member, and then going either to grab something in the member lounge or going to Chicago Athletic Association hotel afterwards. The new thing that I'm trying to do, because one of my goals is to be in nature every month, and it's a lot harder to do that in the winter than in the spring and summer, is we went to Garfield Park Conservatory. For those of you who are listening and who are not familiar with Chicago, it is our conservatory that is free for residents of Chicago and maybe even Cook County, but don't quote me on that. And they've got all these gorgeous rooms. There's a desert room with all the cacti, there's ponds, there's koi fish. It's just, you feel this exhale when you are in all of the greenery. We even saw a little turtle friend, which was my first time seeing a turtle. And then we also went to a new local spot that opened up right across the way from Garfield Park Conservatory. And that was fun to eat some good food and just have some long conversations with each other without having a screen in between us, because as amazing as this is, there's nothing quite like getting an Amelia hug in person.
Well, I feel the same way about Taylor hugs. And I just want to say that, like, I love these sort of rituals or like having a sort of like, this is my friend date activities, and then taking a bunch of friends on that. Like, I just felt like I was in your daily life, even though we weren't doing things that you do every day. Like, you don't go to Garfield Park every day, but it very much felt like so special. And I was thinking about that again this past weekend because I went out to San Francisco for a book reading for my book, Your Attention is Sacred Except on Social Media. And I stayed with someone who I'd only ever met online. Her name's Sarah Fontaine, and she's a former podcast client. I've done some astrology readings with her. She's a really talented astrologer. And her sister Catherine run a zine called Actually People. And they invited me out to do a reading at their local bookstore, which was beautiful. And like a euphoric experience. But one of my favorite things was just that I stayed with Sarah and I got to do daily life with her and her kids. Like, I did pick up and drop off with school with them one day. And it was really just such a reminder that, like, I love virtual connection, and I love actually also celebrating big moments with people, but there's kind of nothing like dropping into the mundane activities of each other's lives. It's so connective and beautiful, and something I really want more of.
Yeah, I talked about this. Maybe this came up at a book club recently, but one of my favorite experiences was having a good friend of mine live just a couple of blocks down the road from me. And she would text and be like, "Hey, I'm going to go for a walk by the lake. Do you want to come later?" Or, "I'm going to run errands. Do you and Blue is my dog, want to walk with me?" And it just felt very intimate to be able to do these basic things like go to the grocery store or stand with my dog, like walk someplace and then stand outside with Blue while she was running inside and then continue our walk. And so I want to cultivate more of that in my life. I also think for some of the other conversations that we've had in the past about organizing and being involved in your community, these are the building blocks. It is just being with people in the mundane. I even had an instance, I apparently introduced myself to my neighbor a while ago and I totally had forgotten, but they were out of town for a long time to the point that one of the other neighbors in our building was like, "Hey, have you heard from them? Are they okay? We brought their packages up. We just want to make sure everything's fine." And then we finally noticed that the packages went away. So I went over and said, like, "Hi again. I'm Taylor. Here's my phone number. Just in case you are going to go out of town for a long time, we're happy to bring your packages into our place or to do whatever might be helpful." Then we found out that where my neighbor is from is the town in Ohio that my mom grew up in, that a bunch of my family still lives in. And there was a steeper level of connection, and all it took was hearing the door move and say, "Oh, they're inside now. Let me knock on the door with a post-it note and say, 'Hi, here's my number.'" And now I feel like I know them better. And my next step, I'm saying this on the podcast for accountability, is that I'm just going to invite her over for tea or see if she wants to have go for a walk by the lake once it's not snowing anymore. So, yeah, these mundane things are not just for building friendships, but also building a sense of community in a time where community is one of the most valuable resources that we have.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful and something that I have also reflected on a lot since moving to Nebraska. So I know pretty much all of my neighbors, at least on the half, like the north half of my block where I live, because I'm only one house from the corner. But for the next like five or six houses down, we all know each other. We all have each other's numbers to some degree. Like no one here is like gonna be my best friend, also because many of them are like 60-plus-year-old white men who like we don't have a lot in common, as you might imagine. But it's so nice to know them. And even with that though, I had an experience the other day where I stopped at a gas station nearby and this guy said hi to me twice and I was like, that's weird. And then I realized he was one of my other neighbors. I was like, oh no. And I just didn't recognize him because he was like coming back from the gym and had a hat on. And then I felt really silly. And I actually don't know his name. So my gentle accountability is I'm going to figure out this man's name. I think that we have a rental unit that's across the street from my house that has had a lot of people cycle through since we've lived here. So that's a place where I've not put in the effort to meet the neighbors because they have never lasted more than a few months. But he's been there for almost a year now. And I feel like if he's recognizing me, I want to be a little more neighborly. It also probably might be because I wear the same red sweatshirt like every single day of my life here. So I'm pretty easy to spot. And also, you know, we walk Zoe every day. So if I'm with the dog, it's very obvious. But yeah, I think it's so nice just to know the people around us. And I know this was a big lesson of the pandemic for so many people, but I just think as we discussed ad nauseum here on the show, like with everything going on in the world, the more we can be familiar with the people around us, the more we can weave those webs of support when and if and as we need them. So I love this. I didn't expect us to have such a cute little neighborly chat, but what a fun way to open.
Well, actually, another unexpected thing because I'm me and that's just what I do. I'm remembering now that when we talked, we had a whole conversation about friendship and the rituals that help us keep friendship alive. We talked about how much we value being in person together, but also how we're both, I guess, pleasantly surprised by how we've been able to maintain some of our closest relationships being people who don't live in the same city as us. So if you're open to it, I would love for each of us to maybe share one of the things that we do to stay close to the people who are not physically close to us. I'll share. I have another group chat that is not the Amelia and Taylor group chat. And it is two of my really good friends. We met in our very first job out of college. And now one of them lives in Portland, one of them lives outside of San Francisco. And we still stay in touch. The ritual that has become most meaningful for us is we actually, I guess we've done two versions of it. The iteration right now is we just send photos every Monday of what happened the previous week with little blurbs about what happened. And there's a two-sided benefit. There's a sense of getting to see the mundane details. The idea is like there's no editing. You're not trying to make these look pretty. It's just here's what happened. The other thing that's been really nice is that there are things that I wouldn't document for myself, even though maybe I should, but I want to document it for them. And so there will be these little moments of a project that I'm doing where I say, oh, wait, I want this process shot, not because I'm going to post it on Instagram, because I don't even remember the last time I posted a story on Instagram, but because I want to show my dear friends. And I just want to encourage as many people to steal that practice. It has become really connective. The other version that we did of this is for a while we called it Friday Frittatas, and we would send videos or voice notes to each other, summing up the week. It worked for several months, but it definitely was feeling like a heavier lift. And so the photos are the right amount for us of documenting, but not feeling like we have to remember enough to recount to people, especially because theoretically on our calendars we have a video conferencing, we use Whereby, but a meeting every other Sunday night. And honestly, it probably ends up actually happening once a month or once every 6 weeks, but it's on our calendar. And that just gets rid of a lot of the, oh, let's find a time. No, the time is on our calendar. And if we need to shift, we can't. So I said I was going to share one, but that was like three. But again, I'm just pulling us in a different direction. So have fun. You're along for the ride, Amelia.
No, I love this. I mean, I am literally always happy to talk about friendship, especially in the context of the show and our friendship. And I mean, I love the Monday photo dump that you all do. I don't think that's what you called it, but that's what I think of from Instagram days. And I would like to do more of that with other friends or put rituals like that in place. I think for me, there have been like the sort of underlying theme or principle, perhaps, of maintaining long distance friendships for me is open communication about how and how much we want to communicate as friends, such that there are no like hurt feelings or resentments around how we are or are not connecting, seeing each other, speaking to each other. And that may feel obvious, but I think it is so underdone in adult friendships often. Like, especially those of us who, made friends in high school or college, where we're like, the way we made friends was just through a lot of proximity to each other. And then we try to just sort of maintain that. But when you're older, that doesn't work. Like, A, you don't have the proximity, and B, you don't have the time. And even if you want to prioritize friendships, it's like you can't go back to high school and be in class with each other for 7 hours a day, right? Like, it doesn't work that way. So I've been really surprised since leaving Chicago that some of the friendships that I have maintained and that have been closest with, including ours, were not the people I spent the most time with when I lived there, or not what I would have considered my strongest friendships. Like, you and I became much better friends after leaving. And I think if I had stayed and there wasn't a global pandemic, like, we would have still, like, our friendship was on the up when the pandemic happened and then I was leaving. Like, we were already becoming closer friends. But I think with you and with another one of my friends, Kate, like, Kate and I are even closer now because I visit and stay with her once a year. And I think that in those like 4 days that I stay at her apartment once a year, we get so much more quality time together than we did across the like maybe 8 or 10 interactions we had like when I was living in Chicago, but never, staying with her or like having that sort of depth of quality time. And so I think that something that's important to me is just really deciding together as friends what helps us feel close. And so I have friends where we have to see each other. Like, we're not good at texting. Even if we try to put a ritual in place, it always falls apart. And so there are people in my life where I know, like, if I want to stay close to you, we have to see each other every other year. And we have to figure out a way that that's going to happen. And we're both up for that, right? Like, we make a concerted effort, and that's fine. And we don't talk much in between. I have other friends where I voice message them almost every day. And that is like how we communicate. And then I also like the standing friend date. So my friend Caro put this in place for us. Like, every Friday at 10 a.m. Central Time, it is on our calendar that we will have a video call. I would say it happens like 50% of the time. And that's okay. Like, the other rule of that standing call, which it sounds like your group probably has too, is like no hard feelings. And if you don't feel like showing up for it, just like send a text and we won't do it that day. Like, it's always okay to shift or cancel or adjust. But again, even then, like, we talk over 20 times a year because it's on the calendar, even if we do cancel it or someone's traveling half the time anyway. And I can say without a doubt that Kara and I would not be that close anymore if we didn't have that call there, because Carol lives in Mexico City and like travels all over the world all the time. I live in Lincoln and like don't travel all over the world all the time. And we have pretty different lifestyles, but those calls keep us connected and close. So yeah, I guess that is also kind of three things that I've worked with, like really knowing what you need to feel close to people, being open to visiting. I will say for me, like I meet a lot of people online, and I've noticed that if I don't actually connect with someone in real life within a year or two of meeting online, they don't stick. Like, I really need in-person interaction for someone to really have like lasting relationships in my life. That's a me thing, but it is true about me. So the willingness to show up and be there in person, the communication about how you like to communicate, and then also like the standing calls. That is why I still feel so committed to us making this podcast, because yes, we would talk otherwise, but we wouldn't talk like this once a month if we weren't doing Thought of You, I don't think. And it's one of my favorite parts of the month, so I'm so happy we do it together.
I'm really happy that we get to do this together too. And I agree. We've talked about this before, but I think it's all the Capricorn in our chart. We love a work project. Or literally, one of my projects with another one of my close friends is called Personal Project. And it's a thing that we co-host together, and it gives us something that we get to do. So that's a bonus from Taylor and Amelia's friendship to yours. If you too have a Capricorn stellium, consider having some type of work or personal project with one of your friends and just seeing how it grows. Like, this is such a labor of love for both of us, and I know I personally find it to be a delight that other people listen to this. It's not either of our biggest podcasts that we've ever hosted, but there's just something special about people being interested in hearing what we have to say in relationship with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's more fun to me to do the media analysis as kind of like an open conversation. Like, I love hearing your point of view and I love when we talk together, but I also really love when other people chime in. And then and I think as generators, both of us really thrive with a sort of like response from someone else, and that works well for us. I don't think everyone has to start a podcast with their best friends to stay and deepen their friendship. But as you said, for the Capricorns among us, it works really well. And it is quite fun. And I also think it helps with like prioritization. I think that's something that can get really tricky as you like maintain adult friendships, is that it's not that there's a hierarchy of who or what matters more, but if you don't make things a priority, they can just kind of fall out of your life. And having projects together helps me personally always like stay aligned with my priorities and make time for the things that I really want to make time for. So yeah, I love doing this.
And I also love getting to text you about things as they're happening. We often will text in parallel, like, hey, did you watch this episode yet? No, I'm going to watch this later today. Last night was a rare occurrence when we were kind of simultaneously watching something. It's funny, Matt and I started watching the Oscars earlier than you did, but because we were watching on a delay, when you jumped in, you were actually ahead of us. And it was so cute for you trying to share excitement about what was happening without spoiling, which you walked that line very well. And also, I needed that because in the room, at one point, I was getting so nervous that Matt fast forwarded to watch whether someone won or not, and then was like, okay, I know. You can open your eyes. You're going to be okay. And then rewinded it again so I could watch with a little bit more calm. This was the first time in I don't know how long that I watched the Oscars live. Is that a normal practice for you?
It is not a normal practice for me. I don't think I've watched live since the La La Land Moonlight debacle. I think that was truly the last time I was watching the Oscars live, which was a wild time. And I thought about that more than once last night as we were watching, and just the reality of who the Oscars is for and who the Academy celebrates. But as you were talking about us watching media or like texting about media synchronously and asynchronously, I was actually thinking about how our Oscars journey together started when we listened to the Vibe Check predictions episode. And we were like texting about like, do we agree? What are they going to say? What do we think? And then just shout out to that episode. I feel like they got it pretty spot on. Like they had pretty solid predictions, with the exception of maybe like my favorite win of the night that I don't think they really believed or trusted was coming, even though I think they perhaps wanted it. So if folks haven't heard that episode, do highly recommend tuning in, even if you already know what happened at the Oscars. But all of that said, Taylor, what were some of your impressions from the awards? What really, like, and what was that moment that made you so stressed you had to fast forward?
That is a great question. I think it was the first of the bigger ones that Sinners was up for, and I was nervous, but then I knew that Sinners won because Matt was like everyone else in the category was white. And so Matt was able to fast forward and say, "Oh, we're good." I was like, "Okay, this is a visual thing. A black person is standing up. I can breathe easier." Yeah, so that was what was making me nervous. I think hands down, my favorite moment of the night was that performance of I Lied to You. That scene, we talked about it in our previous episode where we talked about Sinners, is just so technically awe-inspiring, so transformative and powerful. Like, I truly get teary-eyed thinking about it because my relationship to music, and especially as I have been getting more into my own musical style, I mean everything in music is building on something else, but my style, I love a lot of things that are groovy, disco inspired, blues inspired, jazz that have all of these roots. And so for me, it's like seeing this ancestral timeline in one place and to see it translated into a live performance was just I already told Matt I was going to cry, and he was like, "Why are you going to cry?" Because I already saw that scene in the movie, and now they're going to do this, and I already know that Misty Copeland, who is retired, is going to be performing this. Of course I'm going to cry, and I did. The other fun thing was that Timothy Chalamet was sitting in the front row. And so to have Misty Copeland doing her thing and being like, yeah, people still care that I came out of retirement. Ballet is not dead was also another satisfying moment. So that, and then Matt and I love Audrey Nuna, who is one of the singers in K-pop Demon Hunters. So to see her get to have a moment where she's at the Oscars was also just a fun little nerd out moment. We have stanned Audrey Nuna for a long, long time in this household. And to see her come up, I'm just like, I hope that she's able to parlay this into continuing to do more of her music her way, because she raps, she sings, she's so multi-talented. All I'm talking about right now are the performances. What are your thoughts performance wise before we get into what we really want to talk about, which is who won and who didn't win?
Yeah, so I also loved the performances. I loved seeing Misty Copeland on stage. I also then like I didn't realize she had a hip replacement in December, so the fact that she's out there like dancing so beautifully. I mean, frankly, dancing at all. I'm sure beautifully is the only way that Misty Copeland can dance, but I was so impressed and inspired, of course. And then the whole performance was beautiful and amazing. I also loved the Golden performance. I am a big fan of that song and of K-pop Demon Hunters. And it is so cool to see all three of the performers in that group or like on that track shine in this way. Pun intended, I suppose, with the Golden theme. But I even also enjoyed Barbara Streisand singing in memoriam of Robert Redford. That was like a little moment that I had tuned in just like when I turned it on. That was when the whole in memoriam section started. So it was just like all of people like crying for Catherine O'Hara and Diane Keaton and, you know, these beautiful, so many performers that passed in the past year. So that was kind of the tone I started out on with my Oscars viewing. And then while that was happening, I went back and watched the Sinners performance because how wonderful you said it was, and it was so great. And yeah, I actually was surprised that I enjoyed my viewing experience. My memory of watching award shows historically has been feeling like bored and underwhelmed, but I kind of enjoyed, I mean, I really enjoyed the musical performances, but I also even kind of enjoyed like all of Jimmy Kimmel's digs at Trump and some of the winner speeches. So yeah, let's talk about the winners. Taylor, before we get to who won, how would you set up like the showdown that was the Oscars this year?
I just had to take a deep breath. So there is what I've been seeing referred to online as the people's favorite, Sinners, which is now the most nominated film in Oscars history. And again, we recorded a whole episode on how much we love Sinners, so I'm going to try to limit my fangirling. And then One Battle After Another, which I actually enjoyed. Like, I thought it was a fun little campy movie. I understand all of the critique of how it shows Black women, et cetera, et cetera. You and I talked about this as well, just learning more pieces. I didn't realize it was based on Vineland, which is, from my understanding, a book about white revolutionaries. And then they just retrofitted the Black people into it, which unlocks some things of, oh yeah, this is why the portrayal did not feel truly accurate because it wasn't written with Black people. Yeah, so I thought it was a fun movie. I didn't necessarily think it deserved a Best Picture nomination, but I did think it was a fun action movie. What has been interesting is people are just freaking out about One Battle After Another. Like, this is, I don't know, like God came down from the mountain or came to the mountain, gave Paul Thomas Anderson like these chiseled stones with One Battle After Another on it. Like, that's how people are treating it. I listen to The Town when episodes sound interesting. I think we've talked about this before. It's this guy, Matt Bellamy. He always is yelling. I don't understand. Like, his voice is just yelling. Amelia's about to spit out her coffee. But
he is always yelling. I don't understand.
But strangely, sometimes that's calming to me to just like, he's just always so loud. And I'm like, okay. And when I need a shock to my system, it works. When I was listening to him in the run up for some of the Oscars episodes, which I feel like I needed that counterbalance because my algorithms, the people that I talk to, we're all about Sinners. And then I've seen some commentary on Hamnet as well. And like people being super excited for that. I actually haven't seen it yet. People in his conversations were so excited about One Battle After Another, not even like bringing up Sinners. And so I needed that grounding to say, okay, I'm in a very specific slice of the cinephile world that appreciates Sinners. And then there's this whole other industry and system that does not see Sinners for what it is. And that is what we were walking into. There's also all of this context of no black person has ever won Best Director, which is huge for your career. That is like getting a blank check to be able to do whatever project you want for the rest of your career. No black person has ever won that. We've had instances in the past where movies that center black folks get all kinds of nominations, but then they don't actually win. So, first of all, I was nervous that Sinners wouldn't win anything and it would be this huge letdown. Thankfully, that is not what happened. But still, I was walking in with a lot of trepidation, especially because One Battle After Another, which again, we've talked about in a previous episode as well, it has black people in it. I would not say the movie is actually about those black people, but if you really wanted to boil it down to an identity politics situation, people could feel a pat on the back for saying, well, look, we're voting for this movie that is, quote, about black people, when really it's, I believe he both wrote and directed. Paul Thomas Anderson both wrote and directed One Battle After Another. Like, it is still a very white movie, and the perspective is whiteness and their perception of blackness. But if you just look at the cast, you can say, well, I feel good about this, and we're not Oscars so white because there's black people here. I'm stepping off my soapbox.
I mean, I think it's a very apt and important soapbox, if I'd even call it one. I would completely agree. I feel like Paul Thomas Anderson has had such like cult fame in the film world for so long. And I have watched many of his films and tried to figure out what it's about so many times. Like, I sort of enjoyed Boogie Nights, but otherwise, there was like not any of his movies that I could get into. And similarly, I enjoyed watching One Battle After Another as an action film, as a sort of like pseudo radical or revolutionary film. I think for me, it's interesting. When I first watched it, I think and I rated it on Letterboxd, I was like, it's like 4 or 5 stars for me. I was like, this was a really interesting and enjoyable experience. And what really frustrated me is as the award circuit has happened and Paul Thomas Anderson, who is also known by PTA, like his initials, if anyone has seen that and didn't know what it was, it's Paul Thomas Anderson, because it took me a while to figure that out.
It's not a teacher PTA meeting.
It is not. I have felt so frustrated by his award speeches and interviews where he has either ignored or denied the political nature of the film. And he has not spoken out against any of the atrocities happening right now, including all of the ICE raids and abductions in the US, when his film opens in an ICE camp. And so I feel like there's a lot of stolen valor for him of like making this like political movie that features these like powerhouse black actresses. I mean, Tiana Taylor, Regina Hall, extraordinary, but like also so underutilized in that film, like wildly so. And yeah, it just frustrated me to no end. So in the most literally like performative white lady move I could make, I just went on Letterboxd and I moved it down to half star, like rewrote my review, which I understand is not an actual act of anything, but I just felt so frustrated by his entire like appearance and way of being throughout the award circuit. And that doesn't even get into the awards that film won last night. So Taylor, you want to talk about some of the winners, the things we were excited by and then also frustrated by?
Michael B. Jordan as Best Actor.
Highlight of the night.
And his mom there and him being so excited about winning with his mom. I just loved that moment. I also, something that I have appreciated so much with Sinners, and this is conversations that you and I have had in the past. Speaking of doing projects with your friends and growing up with your friends, Michael B. Jordan, Ryan Coogler, and then Ludwig, I forget his last name. Sorry, Ludwig. Ludwig, probably, if I'm really trying to get the pronunciation, but who won for the best score. Um, they have known each other for a long time. So Ryan and Ludwig have known each other since college. And then Ryan and Michael B. Jordan have been working together for over a decade at this point. And I love one, this idea. I've quoted, I believe it's Issa Rae who talks about this as well, of networking across, not focusing so much on, I need to get this A-lister now, or in online business, like I need this person who hit $1 million in their business and they're who is going to give me credibility. But seeing the people who are at or near your level and saying, we're dedicated to this craft and we want to get better together and we want to play to our strengths and grow in the areas that are growth edges together. I love that. It's not, I mean, yeah, it's not even just a bromance. It's like this, I love it. I also, speaking of bromance, there's a really sweet moment, and I want to, I'm sure someone screen grabbed it, but like the hugs and the tenderness when Michael B. Jordan won with Ryan Coogler, that felt healing to me to see, especially because I just read, I got it. Oh, I just read Don't Cry for Me by Daniel Black, which is a story that is all about Black masculinity and what is or is not allowed for Black men. It's about this older Black man who is dying and writing a letter to his son that he's estranged from. And so I've been extra sensitive to models of what it means for Black men to be in a relationship with each other. And I think Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler offer a new example that is needed for what that can look like. So that's one thing, the friendship side of it, the relational side of it. Also, I did not realize, I apologize, but Michael B. Jordan, I was not familiar with his game. Like, I didn't watch The Wire, so I didn't know that he was in The Wire. Then he was on like daytime soaps. I knew about Fruitvale Station and all of that, but I wasn't aware of what happened before. And I love a person who says, I want to do this thing and I want to get good at this thing and I'm going to try and I'm not going to be too cool for school. I'm going to care about the things that I actually love and not eschew things because I'm not supposed to think those are cool. I don't know if you've seen the video of Michael B. Jordan's one of his high school bullies interviewing him and trying to make it sound like they were friends. And he kind of calls her out and was like, weren't you the one who was calling me whatever name? I just love it. I love a person who knows themselves and is dedicated to their craft. So that made me really happy. And then, side note, his mom just glows from the inside out. I was just like, of course you raised this kind of son because you're dipped in gold and you just like nurtured him and he ended up the way that he did. Okay, I am gushing about Michael B. Jordan and I'm not mad about it.
No, nor should you be. I mean, I completely agree with everything you said. That was such a beautiful moment. And his speech was so beautiful. And, you know, he opens with like, God is good. And he closes with, I love you all. And says both of those things multiple times. And it was just such a beautiful testament to everything you just said about like the work and the like reps that he's put into his career. But also I think his ability to like be with and stay with himself and always be moving with his peers in the ways that you mentioned, right? Like his speech was all about community and gratitude and care. And it was so reflective, which I just really, really appreciated. And I almost don't even want to bring this into like the proverbial room of our conversation, but I know that we had talked about this before recording, how you wanted to talk about this, which is like, for him to stand there and be so like confident and grateful for where his career has come, it's very clear that he is an amazing actor. He is a great and will be even more of a great. And then to contrast that with Timothy Chalamet, who was like campaigned very hard for that same award and stood on stages last year and was like, I will be a great. There's something I really like in sort of Michael B. Jordan's like understated community oriented greatness that I found so much more inspiring and important and values aligned than like Timothy Chalamet's sort of striving assertion of his greatness. And then, of course, this like weird stomping on ballet and opera on the way thing that he's now been doing. I'm curious, Taylor, if you had any thoughts about Timothy last night or anything else you wanted to say about him.
I love that he got a front row seat to his own rejection because Marty Supreme got no awards and none for Timothy Chalamet. So as someone who grew up doing ballet and just appreciates the art form and knows how physically difficult it is, like I cannot dance ballet anymore because it is so hard on my body. For him to say that already was just so unnecessary. I also am just realizing that for me as a person, like even being mean joking is hard for me. Like I don't I don't want to intentionally or unintentionally stomp on anyone else to lift myself up. What made it worse is learning that Timothy Chalamet's sister and mother are both highly trained ballet dancers, ballerinas. And so to already say that about another art form that you should be in solidarity with, acting is not more intensive than dance or opera. In some ways, you could argue that it's less intensive, but that's not a hill that I'm willing to die on. But for you to say that instead of saying, I want everyone to be interested in every type of art, and I want a world where artists of any kind are not having to fight, because his comments about ballet and opera being a dying art were him talking about how he doesn't always know if he wants to advocate for people to go back and see things in theaters because he doesn't want to personally feel like he's a part of something that's dying, similar to how ballet and opera is dying. Which then also makes me wonder, like, how much do you really care about this thing? Because if you're not willing to advocate for the art form as it was designed to be seen on a big screen, do you really care about this thing this much? Or do you just want to be seen as someone who is doing whatever is relevant right now? Like, it really just gave me the vibes of, I want to be famous, and this is the vehicle for me to be famous now. But if this stops happening, then I'll go start a tech company or do whatever else is going to get me in front of the most people, which again, then makes sense to me why he's dating a Jenner, because visibility is very clearly very important to him, versus Michael B. Jordan. And this was so, it became like I'm building a practice based on how I saw certain people show up. With Michael B. Jordan, I don't know if you caught it. He said it kind of quickly, but he also thanked his ancestors and his guides. And as someone who is getting more connected with my ancestors and really trying to think through what I am the beneficiary of through my ancestors, and maybe what I've been given from my ancestors that I need to heal for our whole family line, to see someone see themselves in context of a lineage rather than trying to make themselves singular was important to me. And I have begun to see within myself how for so long I really adapted this idea that, and really capitalist, but all of the things, white supremacist, et cetera, of, oh, success is to be singular. And the more I get in touch with my roots and how other people did it, it's like, no, success is communal. The other person who did this beautifully was in the Sinners universe, Autumn Durald Arkapaw, who was the first, not just first woman, but also first woman of color to win Best Cinematography. She said, "Every woman in here, stand up," because I would not be here without all of you. And that didn't feel like a trite thing that she was saying. She believed that. She understood that her success was interconnected in all the other women who paved the way and the roles that they played, whether they were in front of the camera or behind the camera. And that was very apparent to me, this sense of not just that everyone will say, "And to the other people in my category, like, hats off to you." It wasn't that for either of them. It was this deep sense of Ubuntu, which is like a person is a person through other persons. This Archbishop Desmond Tutu really popularized this concept, but that's what it made me think of. And the Ubuntu mindset is really different than this singular success at all cost mindset. What stood out to you? Because I know we both had feelings about different people's speeches and what resonated and what didn't. What did you notice in other people's pitches? Oh my gosh. I've been talking to founders lately. Speeches.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the highlights of the night for me were all of Sinners wins. So we've already mentioned Best Actor for Michael B. Jordan, Best Cinematography, but also Ryan Coogler did win Best Original Screenplay, which I know was not the Best Director or Best Picture award that we wanted for him, but I do want to celebrate that he is an Oscar winner for that, for his writing. And then also winning Best Original Score, as you mentioned. So I think that, like, those were all highlights for me. I had kind of two disappointments, I suppose. One was the Paul Thomas Anderson win for Best Director and Best Picture. I was just unenthused on both accounts. And the speeches / pitches he gave upon winning, to me, were also very, not only underwhelming, but like frustrating. I felt like in both instances, he tried to make a sort of offhand joke about like everyone who was nominated with him. Like he called them his classmates one time, but then like he also dismissed their wins. He talked about how good it felt to like be the winner of them. And that sense of like prevailing and beating people just like really didn't sit well with me. I also felt like he thanked the Academy, but I don't think like meaningfully a lot of the people who are responsible for those wins for him. And overall, it just felt so like self-centered, and this is a total projection on my part, but it did feel a little bit like somebody who knows that he's made a lot of people's quote unquote favorite movies for a while and now finally got his win, and it just felt a little smug, and I just was not excited about it or here for it at all. How did you feel about PTA at the Oscars?
Yeah, I think the big thing that was dancing in the back of my mind was knowing that he said this film wasn't political, but then in his speech, he's alluding to wanting a better world for his kids, and that was why he did this. And it's like, okay, so now is it political? Like, does it get to be political now that you won? He was not standing on business. Like, just believe what you actually believe, and then be consistent with that, rather than this wishy-washy, like, now I can maybe say what I really wanted to say. That annoyed me.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan. The other thing that frustrated me about the Oscars, okay, so I will admit, I have not seen Sentimental Value, which got a lot of nominations, and I understand it is probably a great film, but I could not believe that it won like Best International Feature Film, looking at all of the other films there, especially the voice of Hind Rajab coming out of Tunisia and speaking so acutely to everything happening in Palestine and around the world. Like and I haven't seen the whole film, but I've watched extensive clips on YouTube of that film. And to me, it just felt like this moment of like whiteness winning in a field of like so many important films. And I felt the same way about Best Documentary Feature with Mr. Nobody Against Putin. I did like the speech that those winners gave a lot, but you know, The Alabama Solution and The Perfect Neighbor are very clearly films about race and racialization in the US that I thought were very worthy of winning that award and did not win. But I don't know. I just, as I watched more and more of the awards, obviously, like, Oscars So White is not a new thing, but it just felt like a lot of that was being repeated over and over with winners in these like various categories. And I don't know. I guess I will watch Sentimental Value, but I just don't think I'll get the hype for it. And I think, did it get a Best Picture nom too? Is that true? Did I make that up?
That sounds right. Also, have you seen F1?
Oh, yes.
Because I was just like, why? I have not seen it, but it felt like a higher class Fast and Furious, which is probably not doing it any favors, but I was just surprised by how much it was nominated for. I didn't understand.
It was so bad, Taylor. Like, I did watch it with JJ. Because I mentioned it during our last episode, because for Valentine's Day, JJ and I watched F1 and Fight Club, which was like the most masculine Valentine's Day I've had forever. And I found it, I didn't like the color grading on it. I didn't like the plot. It was way too long. The only cool thing about it was the shots of racing itself. And so I could have seen maybe if there was something they wanted to put it up for that. But as a Best Picture nominee, I was appalled. I was like, how did this happen? I couldn't. I was like, I'm so annoyed. Everything else in the Best Picture category, fine. I'm like, I get this. This makes sense to me. That one, no thank you. But yeah, I don't know. I don't actually have a bone to pick with Sentimental Value. I just like felt frustrated that, you know, this like Norwegian film about fathers and daughters and whiteness from a European lens, like there were so many other deserving films in so many of these categories that it kind of swept and took home. So I was not as excited about that. What else stood out to you from the Oscars? I'm trying to remember if there were other moments I wanted to bring in.
Javier Bardem being like, no to
No
war,
war,
free Palestine. Yep. Just right off the bat, let me say this. We love to see it. It was very much Hannah Einbinder, where what did she say? She was like, go birds, fuck ice, free Palestine.
Yeah, I really appreciated that. And especially because a lot of the winners sort of had these nods or gestures to liberatory politics at the end of their speeches, but for Javier Bardem to just come out and like say it so clearly and immediately, I thought was really powerful. Because I think it was like the Sentimental Value director, Joachim Trier, like he cited James Baldwin at one point and at the end of his speech. And then also the creators of Mr. Nobody Against Putin spoke out against war. And so there were some themes of that. I think another heartbreaking moment was the winner of Best Documentary Short, All the Empty Rooms, which is a documentary about the bedrooms left behind of the children who've been murdered in school shootings in the U.S. One of the mothers came and spoke about her daughter, and I teared. Like, it was incredibly tragic. And I think she had on one of the pins that was meant to be either Ice Out or Free Palestine or both. And she spoke out, which I thought was really powerful, about gun violence in the U.S. and around the world. So there were these like moments of political valence, which to me then just takes me back to Paul Thomas Anderson is a coward, which is like the biggest takeaway for me of the entire award season and the Oscars, perhaps. Although I will say also Tiana Taylor cheering for Michael B. Jordan when he won, and all the shots they showed of her like being so excited and like making eye contact with him from the front row, that I think was another beautiful Oscars moment.
Yeah, the only other thing that's coming to mind is kind of a bummer, but I'm going to bring it up because I think it is around these themes. I didn't think Delroy Lindo was going to win for Best Supporting Actor, but I felt like he deserved it. That specific scene in Sinners, which I believe part of it was improv, where he's talking about the pain of what he's experienced. They're driving down the road past all of these sharecroppers, and he ends up like bursting into this blues song, and it's such a moving scene, and I wish that the artistry that went into that were recognized. Instead, Sean Penn wins, and I think he gave like a great performance. That it's again, I One Battle After Another just feels like kind of campy to me. And the over the top performance of this racist who literally looks like he has a stick up his butt in the way that he walks, it's like so silly and kind of satirizing these people who think they're the epitome of manliness, and then you end up looking like such a small man. But he didn't even come to the Oscars. And it just, the level of, again, I like earnest people. I like people who care about their craft, and they're just like, oh yeah, okay, I'm nominated, but I'm not even gonna come. It just rubbed me the wrong way when Delroy Lindo was right there and would have been so honored to receive that. Also, after the award season that he's had with him and Michael B. Jordan, the issue with the person who, which we didn't even talk about, but is that the BAFTAs? And someone saying the N word. They have Tourette's. They have a particular type of Tourette's where they say things. And there was a lot that was wrong with that situation. From what I've heard of the filmmaker who has the Tourette's, who was saying those things, he had worked with the BBC before. They knew about his condition. He thought that he was going to be well supported. There actually was a mic in front of him to amplify what he was saying. Like, it didn't make any sense. But to see what Delroy Lindo specifically had to endure, and then to have this loss, and then to have the person who lost not even care enough to show up, and maybe something terrible happened to Sean Penn, but I didn't get those vibes. It just was disappointing and was like, oh yeah, this is the world that we live in. Especially, and then the broader context that I'm thinking of are, I don't know if you've seen any of those videos of the Doge people who are like their deposition videos, and they're being deposed, and the people are asking like, okay, so tell me how you decided whether these grants were related to DEI or not. And then it was just like, okay, well, we did this prompt in ChatGPT and we had it do XYZ. And you can see all of the outputs for those things. And I'm going to try not to get too frustrated about that. And then the interviewer kept pushing them and being like, so what is your understanding of what DEI is? And this one guy keeps going back to, well, it's just whatever is in the executive order. And the interviewer is saying, okay, yeah, we understand that there is an executive order. What is your understanding of DEI? And it just made me so mad that this person who cannot even articulate what they think DEI is and why they think it is wrong was put in a position to do a prompt to ChatGPT to wipe out millions of dollars of grant funding that has material impact on people's experiences. And then the worst part of it is that then they got a court order that actually all these videos have to be scrubbed from the internet because it is doing damage to their reputation, even though they chose to do this thing. So this is a broader context in which I'm seeing Sean Penn not show up and be like, okay, great, you win, you don't even care about it. Meanwhile, this other person has worked his whole career, has endured racist experiences, not dissimilar from what his character experienced, and we're still just letting this person win. It really irked me. And That's why they say the personal is political, because I couldn't read that moment without thinking about what I had seen on the news.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely missed that news cycle, and that's so infuriating to me on so many levels. And yeah, I mean, it is frustrating, of course, like through this valence of like what we have seen Delroy Lindo and Michael B. Jordan go through in the awards circuit, but they're still showing up, they're still being present. And then you have other actors and like not showing up. I do think that's frustrating. I feel like my understanding, and again, this does not have to change your feelings about it, is that Sean Penn has skipped many Oscar ceremonies. And there's like some reporting. I don't really understand why that he was like went to Ukraine instead, because he's done a series of advocacy and activist things there. And I don't think it has to change any of our perceptions of frustration with him not being present for the Oscars. And he would not have been my vote for Best Supporting Actor. But I don't know. It's just all. I would say that this Oscars, to me, was a mixed bag of some recognition that I'm glad happened, and some wins that I think were well deserved, and then plenty of others where I think the Oscars just stayed the course of its like valorization of subtle white mediocrity. That just kind of feels where it landed for me in the end. What's your final take on the 2026 Oscars, Taylor?
It was surprisingly enjoyable. And depending on what happens, what's nominated next year, maybe I'll watch it again. Like, it was fun. I had some work for my PhD on that I was doing in the background, and like when something pulled my attention, I could really tune in, but then I could go back to finding a citation for something, and that felt like a nice experience.
Beautiful. Well, should we talk about some other TV as we're not really wrapping up the episode, but I know we wanted to talk about television a bit. Are you ready to transition into our industry chat?
Yes, industry has entered the chat. I'm so ready.
Okay, so tell me so for folks tuned in, if you have not seen is it season 3 or season 4? Season 3. The most recent season of Industry. Mm-hmm. There will be some spoilers in this conversation, so you might want to pause and finish it and return, unless you don't plan to watch it yourself, and then you can keep listening. We're also going to talk a bit in a moment about the first 3 episodes of Paradise, season 2. So that will be kind of coming up, and this will be a spoiler-filled, not a spoiler-free conversation. So listen as you like with that knowledge. But Taylor, what did you think about the most recent season of Industry? Who did you like? Who did you not like? What stood out to you?
I liked no one, and that's how it is. Matt will wander in when I'm watching, and I just have to tell it, like, there was at one point one person that I was rooting for in the show. He's gone now, so now it's a bunch of more ranging from, when you think of the chart of like chaotic good, chaotic evil, etc., there's not really any chaotic good. The best you can get is maybe a chaotic neutral, and that's being generous. So it's all of these very selfish, evil, trauma-filled people who are playing with other people's money in the hopes of getting a lot of their own money. And actually, I do like Sweet Pea. Maybe she's a chaotic neutral. Maybe I'll give her.
I think that tracks, yes. But
I forgot
no
about
chaotic good. Like,
no,
everyone is in it for themselves. I feel like something that really stood out to me this season was, I think in season 2, like where we left, Yaz's character and Harper's character was with like some real reckonings that they had about their own trauma and their life experience. And I felt like there was this sort of potential at the end of season 2 that these people we had just sort of watched spiral down and down and down into the depths of their pain, and then, use that as weapons against other people in the market. Like at the end of season 2, I was like, but there's some, like, we could have a redemption arc, especially after everything with Yasmin's father and his death and like what comes next and like her getting engaged and married to her husband who Kit Harington plays, whose name I never remember actually on the show. It's not Jon Snow, but in my head he's always Jon Snow. But when this season came, Henry, yes, to Henry. When this season came out, it was pretty clear pretty quickly that like, oh, we're not getting any redemption arcs at all. Everyone is just going to keep being horrible. What kept you watching? Because for me, I also kept watching. But often when there is no redeeming character, I don't have a good time. So why do you think we had a good time, even though everybody was chaotic evil?
There is something about the structure of every season is there's some type of big deal that's going down. And there is a part of me that wants to know, is their bet going to pay off or not? So I think that's part of what keeps me going. I'm really intrigued by Harper's character. I don't think she's a good person, but she's interesting to me. So Harper is this Black woman from America who, at the beginning of the season, has just launched her own firm, or co-launched with one of her mentors slash former boss. And she's making this big bet. And again, she's not a person that you're rooting for morally, but I want to see her succeed. Like, there's a part of me that still wants to see her succeed. If all of these people are going to be doing these things that I find questionable anyway, I want to see the underdog win. So I was curious about that. I was also really curious about Yasmin, because there was a bit there where I thought that she was going to maybe come onto Harper's side, make an investment in, essentially Harper is betting against Yasmin's husband. And I thought that Yasmin's husband lives with addiction, has had such a privileged upbringing, truly privileged, like has a title, has all of these connections in a way that I think is, yes, similar to what we see in America, but also beyond it, because there's this other level of class and title that we don't have in the same way. So essentially, Yasmin decides to just let him face the consequences for once. And I thought that she might benefit and parlay some of her own money by investing in what Harper is doing by betting against Henry. But really, we go down this very, very different path that I still don't fully understand. Like, there are a couple of scenes that are parallel to each other. We'll come back to those in a moment, but I still don't understand why Yasmin fully made the decisions that she did. But I was holding out hope that maybe she would make a decision that at least I could root for a little bit more. And unfortunately, she didn't. What about you?
Yeah, I think the real strength of this season is that Yasmin and Harper got to be the two main characters. Like, we did sort of, and I think they were to some extent last season, but last season we also had a really big plot line with Rishi, and his gambling addiction that led to the murder of his wife, and like, and some others, I think, with Eric and like things that happened in his life. And I felt like that happened last season, and then this season both those characters took a back seat. Their lives continued to devolve, and they ended up in horrible places by the end of the season, but they weren't like, it didn't feel like we had like 4 or 5 main characters. It felt like we had 2. We had Harper and we had Yasmin, and then we had some other like Sweet Pea and other to the side characters, you know. I think that was a really wise choice, because they were the 2 most compelling actresses or actors on the show, and their narratives were the most interesting, and they become really interesting foils of each other, as Yasmin is this character who had a lot of access through her upbringing, but then lost her familial wealth through her father's like embezzlement scandals. And so she reestablishes herself by marrying into this family and title and everything. We see her grapple with what that means as she tries to like be a really good wife, and that falls apart underneath her. And then we see Harper as the epitome of this sort of like self-made woman, investor, millionaire, and like what that requires of her. And we watch both of them just like over and over again prioritize money and access in different ways. And I think that their ability to maintain this like tenuous friendship amidst that is interesting. Like, as you said, Harper ends up making this big bet against Yasmin's husband's company, but like Harper was making that bet before he was even a part of the company. She tries to like warn Yasmin that like this is happening, you're not going to want to be a part of this. And Yasmin's like, no, this is like the only thing that makes sense for us. And then by the end of the season, we like finally see their friendship, I think, fall apart, because Yasmin starts to like, at the way she reestablishes herself is seemingly to begin some sort of what I might call escort service for this like high echelon of very rich men that she has access to. And Harper's invited to an event where this is happening and realizes what's going on and like tries to like, actually not just tries to, like explicitly asks Yasmin to walk away from it with her, and Yasmin doesn't. And that moment, I thought, was one of the most interesting and compelling things that happened in the season. Like, I feel like I have kept watching all of these seasons to see like what is the straw that is going to like break the camel's back, proverbially, in their friendship, and this seems to have been it.
Yeah. And even beyond the escort service, it also looks like she's doing some type of quote unquote communications services for really right-wing candidates to make them sound more palatable to the masses. And this is what I'm saying. Yasmin and everyone in the show is always out for themselves, but earlier in the season, she realizes that some of the people she is being introduced to are Nazis, to the point that one of them has a painting painted by Adolf Hitler in the room, and she seems upset about it, but then kind of quickly decides to sweep it under the rug, and then is going super hard right, even though, and this is a broader conversation, I don't understand why women make these decisions and think that they're the exception when these men don't want you to be working. Just because you are useful to them right now does not mean that when they get the world that they want, that you are somehow going to be exempted. Their world is a world where men are in power, specifically white men are in power, and you're just a pawn for the time being. But then I guess as I'm saying this out loud, it makes sense because Yasmin's whole life has been being a pawn to men, starting with her father, who appears to be sexually abusive to her. And this is the power that she feels like she can wield. Even though she is a brilliant woman, she speaks multiple languages, she has all of these things to bring to the table, but it's like she can't conceive of her. And by the end of it, it seems like other women really having any power that they can bring to the table beyond the power in their bodies and their aesthetics.
Yeah. And I think, midway through the season, there was this really kind of, I think, beautiful moment between Harper and Yasmin where they like go to a club and like have a night out together and talk about this difference between them. And Harper's directly like, I would give anything to like live a literal day in your body and understand what it is like. And I took that to mean like in terms of the like desire and proximity to power. And Yasmin says to Harper, like, I don't understand where your like confidence and strength and all of this comes from. And like, I think that sort of reckoning, that felt very real to me. And it's something that, not that exact version have I had in friendships with other women, but I think often, especially when I was younger, there would be these sort of moments where we would reckon with a difference between our privilege or between our proximity to power in these friendships. And so I think that was really compelling to me. It really made me root for them as friends, even when professionally they were often like, undercutting each other left and right. Like I was still rooting for their friendship. And at the same time, it's not like, as much as I agree with your complete analysis of Yasmin and how problematic it is, the way that like the only way she can conceive of power is through desire and proximity to men that she maintains, like through helping them desire her. But I'm also curious what you think of Harper and her relationship to power, which I think she just equates to money. Like it's like, money is power, and so I'm going to get as much money as possible. I also think there's something really nuanced happening in the show that doesn't get commented on as much, but I think there is this like clear difference between, Yasmin is Lebanese and British, and Harper is Black and American. And neither of those is, like white Anglo British, like we have these very different nuances on a sort of like global majority BIPOC experience in this culture. And I think that plays into it as well. I'm curious how you may have seen that coming up in this season, if at all.
Matt and I were just actually talking about this recently about how Black Americans have exported so much culturally, and yet anti-Black racism is also a global phenomenon. And so that sense that Black people are loved, admired, and respected when we are in very specific lanes, and then when we try and step out of that, there's a problem. And even though, yes, Yasmin is a woman of color, I would say that, she looks white presenting. There are different nuances, and I think depending on how close you were to a culture like being Lebanese or certain types of Middle Eastern, you would be able to clock more easily, oh, she's of Middle Eastern descent. But I think not everyone knows that type of nuance. And again, colorism is a thing. So even though you might not perceive her to be white, there are documented different relationships that you have as the skin tone starts to get lighter, and like hair texture is more similar, and all of these different things that come out. I was struck by what you said about Harper's idea of power. I do think a lot of it is about money, which to me reads from a sense of childhood trauma. Like I have my own stuff around feeling a lot comfortable when I can look at my bank account and know that like my bills are going to be paid for XYZ amount of time because of things that I experienced in my childhood. And I feel like that's hinted at with Harper as well, her upbringing and how she why and how she got to where she is. Like she wants to feel set, and she's learning. That's another thing we didn't even talk about, is learning to be in relationship with other people. We see it primarily through her relationship with Yasmin, where she is able to open up to a certain extent, but even a little bit more in like a romantic sense. She's trying to figure out, oh, maybe there is more to life than just making tens of millions of dollars. There was something else that I was going to say about Harper. Oh, I think she also just has a big chip on her shoulder. I think she's the type of person who's like, they said that I can't do this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to prove everyone wrong. And I don't know where that comes from, but you can just see it even in the micro facial expressions of how she's acted. She's like, oh yeah, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Yeah, I definitely think that she wants to prove everybody wrong. And in this season, we do have the sort of plot line of her mother dying, and that being this sort of, breaking point of some kind for her. I did feel like this season, I wish they had written in a little more for Harper. Like, I feel like what we get of her character is a sort of like stunted way of maybe kind of sort of trying to build relationships. And I think like they could have done even more with her relationship with Eric to really unpack what was at stake there for her. Like we get a lot of her frustration, and we get a lot of her, I think, sort of like putting on her armor to do the proving that you just talked about. But I'm so curious, like, especially with her relationship with her employee, I guess, partner, employee, and then partner. What was his name? Corbina, I think. And I think that like that was really interesting, but I still want more. So I'm hoping in the next season we actually see some real like character development from Harper, at like on another level. But in past seasons we have like we've seen her struggle with this. I felt like in this season maybe she was given a little bit of a one note portrayal.
It seems like at the end of the day, this is going to be a show about Harper and her trajectory into the upper echelons of wealth and power. So yeah, I have the same hope for as you, but it just seems like we're peeling back characters until she becomes more and more central.
Yeah, I would love a season 5. I think I've been misspeaking the whole time, and the most recent season is season 4. I know the next season is going to be the final season of the show, and I would love an all about Harper season. Something else we haven't mentioned that I thought was really interesting in this season was the like travel to Accra and the way that like the money laundering or like sort of fake pretending there's profit where there's not, that's happening in the company that Harper is shorting is happening through this like sort of setting up these like fake companies or fake transactions in Accra and this like one employee that they've put there. And I think that in many ways that was like an interesting like critique of contemporary colonialism and the way that it happens through these major tech companies and in financial markets. We also had like the scene of Sweet Pea getting punched in the face at the bar there. Like there was a lot that happened. What did you take from that whole, African excursion that the show kind of did in 1 or 2 episodes?
I do think it was helpful to expand beyond what we've talked about so far, which is essentially American markets and European markets, and there's a whole other world out there. I like what you said in terms of the colonialization that is happening through. And I mean, in this case, it wasn't even real investment. It was like some fake line items to say there was investment. But something that has been top of mind for me recently was you were mentioning you were in San Francisco and you actually saw the Meta lenses. This is not in Ghana, but in Kenya. Meta has employees who are going through all of the content, which is having like people in the bathroom, naked people, all of these things. There are Kenyan employees who are having to watch all of that and tag, this is what is happening here, this is not what's happening here. The same thing has happened in the past in terms of content moderation that is often put on people in the global south. There have been reports of things that were theoretically AI automated, but then like with Waymo vehicles, but then there are people in the Philippines who are helping to drive them. So I think this was a financial markets perspective of how these companies might be exploiting the global south. The real life examples that I've been thinking have been more in the tech industry of how we say there's this quote automated innovation when really it's underpaid people. And this is a tale as old as time, and we keep falling for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I read 404 Media's reporting on this, and they introduced me to Michael Joffrey Asia, who's written this really great piece on why AI is African intelligence that I think we can put in the show notes because it goes through exactly his firsthand experience of exactly what you're saying. Like, I guess he worked at an AI data labeling company where they had to like label every micro action in pornography to help the models learn it better, and talked about like the really detrimental effects that it had on his life and mental health and relationships. And reading that, I was like really struck by just how awful all of this sounds. And yeah, seeing that show up on Industry was interesting. I also think that like the app that was being launched on this season of Industry is like moments away from existing. It just feels like the sort of like social investment banking all in one platform. It felt very real. And I will be very, and also just like, I would be so intrigued if in the final season they also get into like the social betting that's happening now. And if that starts to play into, because Harper shorts stocks and companies. So she essentially does that at the financial market level. And I'll be intrigued to see what they come up with for the fifth and final season. Taylor, do you have any predictions for season 5 before we move on to a quick recap of Paradise?
I think the social betting would be a really interesting direction to take things. So I want to piggyback on that one. I'm leaning into, I want it to be a season about Harper. Like, I just want more people to be stripped away and that we're focusing on her. And maybe the question is, like, what happens after I've made all of this money? What is enough? Because there's an emptiness there that we're seeing in all of the characters, but because the tunnel vision keeps getting closer on her, maybe she gets to question that. I don't think there's going to be a happy ending. So I think it's going to leave us on some big question of what was all of this for and was it worth it?
Yeah, I feel like somebody major's got to die in the final season, just from the previous seasons. I mean, we saw Rishi get like so detrimentally injured in this season. We saw the reporter die, but like, yeah, that all feels true. Before we go, we did want to talk a tiny bit about Paradise season 2, the show that you introduced me to on an episode of this show last year, and then I got obsessed with, and then now it's back. I am so pumped after seeing these first 3 episodes. Tell us, how are you feeling about Paradise season 2 so far?
I was nervous because I enjoyed this first season so much, and there is just a lot of open-endedness that you could go in different directions. So I was like, are we going to stay underground? Are we going above ground? What's going to happen above ground? Am I going to are we sticking with the same characters? Are we adding in new characters? There's just a lot of surface area to mess something up and to take away the magic that I really liked. Also, what timelines were we going to play with? Because the first season really plays with like the before, and you're getting bits and pieces of what led up to people being underground, and then the present of being underground. You and I have only watched the first 3 episodes, and so far, I'm pretty pleased. I do have a working theory around what I think Paradise is, if not about, a really strong theme. And I want to get to the end of the season before I fully reveal this, but I'll just say I'm paying special attention to the character Jane, who is this secret agent that everyone overlooks, who is literally lethal, has killed multiple people in the episode. So far, we brought in Shailene Woodley. We have this, what I thought was a really beautiful episode of introducing her experience in the above ground world. I'm also, we'll see. She might feed into my comments about Jane as well. Jury's out. But so far, I like having more characters, understanding what has happened in the world above, and then there's a little bit of foreboding of, but this, like, even if you survive this, there might be another major event that's going to happen. And so I'm kind of on the edge of my seat to see where things go. And is he going to find his wife?
I know. Is he going to find his wife? I think so. I'll say that at this point. I feel like maybe they're going to like have a reunion, like as one of them is dying or something, and they're going to like make me cry a lot. But I feel like the show has been leading up to that, like it really wants us to want that, right? And like they're giving us the backstory of how they fell in love and all these things. Yeah, I really like what they've done with these first 3 episodes, giving us sort of a first episode that paints this picture of what happened above ground when everyone we saw in season 1 was in the bunker. And I love that they set it at Graceland, like of all places. And then giving us an episode of like update on Sterling K. Brown's character name. I never remember character names as much as actors, but like on how
Neither
he
do
got
I.
out and what happened, and then giving us an episode that's an update on what's happening in the bunker while all this is going on. So I do feel like those first three episodes sort of perfectly set us up to sort of like remember all the stakes, give us a little more of his journey, and then take us back into the bunker with the events there. And I'm really excited to keep watching. So as we're recording this, the sixth episode comes out tonight. So we have three more to catch up on, and then the season will go through the spring. So I am with you. I was really nervous about what season two was going to be because season one was so like contained, it like in this location, and like part of my two favorite parts of season one were like the reveal that like, oh, all of episode one was in a bunker, and then the reveal of like, oh, here's what actually happened on the last day of the world. Like, and I was worried they couldn't move it out of that context without it getting no good, but I think they really did. And I was saying to you before we started recording that like I do think they are taking some pages out of the Last of Us book with this sort of like opening with this sort of bottle episode that is so like beautifully portrayed and relational, and really emphasizing these characters' narratives. But it's exciting to see that from just like a wholly original concept, you know, not a show from a video game or something like that. So I'm pumped. I can't wait to see what happens. And apparently to just like have a TV time portion of every Thought of You episode for the rest of the spring.
I love that because after the spring, I'll have at least one streaming service, if not two, that I'm like canceling. My good stuff doesn't come back on until the fall. So this is a season of TV for me.
Oh my gosh. And we didn't even talk about the end of Traitors on this episode. Like we talked about Traitors last time, but you and I talked a lot about the end of Traitors. Folks, if you watched, find us in the comments because it was wild.
That feels like forever ago.
I know it does. It feels like truly years ago that show ended or that we talked about it here. But you know what? I feel like we covered a lot of great TV, a lot of great films, a lot of great life stuff in today's episode. Are there any final things you want to leave the listeners with?
Go watch Sinners if you haven't seen it already, and then go watch the performance of I Lied to You on the Oscars.
And then go read the AI is African Intelligence article. All of that will be linked in the show notes. Great things, great references for your weeks and months ahead. We will be back in April, which will probably feel like a whole nother light year from this moment culturally. I'm really glad we had such an upbeat episode today because I know last time we talked about a lot of really heavy stuff. You and I are also talking about the heavy stuff that is going on in the world. We're thinking about Iran. We're thinking about so many things going on. But thank you to everyone who tuned in to join us for this Oscars recap chat, TV time catch up. And meet us in the comments on Substack. We'll get into everything else there. So until next time, friends, we'll be thinking of you.
Bye.